Greetings, my dear friends. The year 2022 will go down in history as the one that showed a multitude of emotions as far as mankind is concerned. From the fear of COVID, the fear of the unknown with COVID running amok, to exhilaration with the advent of vaccines and vaccination commencing. Slowly, the world started limping back to normal. In February, there was a sudden war between Russia and Ukraine that plagued the nations across the world. And of course, don't forget, China continued flexing muscles, whether it was across the Taiwan Straits or in Arunachal and Ladakh in India, or at a multitude of other locations globally. Economic disaster hit the world as a result of the Wuhan virus and the Ukraine war, leading to food and energy scarcity across the globe, hitting rich and poor alike, whether it was the global rich in Europe and the US or it was the poorer nations in Africa. High inflation, looming global recession, actually hitting four out of the top five economies of the world is a major cause for concern. India remains one bright spot here. Then there was despair. Despair with the re-emergence of the new strains of the Wuhan virus that have started wreaking havoc, not just across China, but now with US, South Korea, Japan, Australia, among other nations. We are on the highway to a climatic hell, a looming climate crisis causing unprecedented floods to droughts, from heat waves to shivering cold, from deadly storms to rising sea levels. So, what do we expect in 2023? Will it be any better than 2022, or will it actually go worse? Will the pandemic end? Will the Ukraine war or the tussle over Taiwan get resolved? What does this year have in store as far as we in India are concerned? Welcome, my dear friends, to Chaks Simplifies. I, Commander Chakrapani, or Chaks, am your host. I would be simplifying complex issues into understandable, smaller bites. In this episode, we will closely examine what to expect in 2023, and this would be in particular reference to India. Just when the world thought COVID fears were receding, COVID was ending, comes the reminder of the new wave hitting China. New variants, as many as 4 of them, are spreading like wildfire, with reports claiming over 1 to 2 million affected on a weekly basis. And there are reports that 1 to 2 million people in China alone could die in the next few months. Surprisingly, just a couple of days back, China admitted for the first time over 60,000 deaths in 1 month alone. Why is this happening in China? Whether it was poor quality of vaccines developed by China, or it was a flawed vaccination drive, insufficient healthcare facilities, to lack of medicines, all of these are factors. Stringent lockdowns, quarantines as a result of the zero COVID policy kept Chinese population isolated and did not result in herd immunity. The recent sudden opening of China, to the extent of it being an absolute U-turn from the zero COVID policy, has released millions of Chinese free to travel across the country and abroad without vaccination. And this undoubtedly is creating this new wave. There are reports as many as 25% of people coming from flights from China are testing positive. COVID is raising its head all of a sudden anew in US, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore, among other countries. The US is reporting over 40,000 cases on a daily basis. Yet, when nations start to impose travel restrictions from travelers from China, China threatens reciprocatory measures against these countries. For example, Japan and South Korea. On the other hand, Thailand has wilted under Chinese pressure, welcoming Chinese travelers. Surprising is the Deputy Prime Minister of Thailand actually received the passengers coming from the first flight from China. So, how do we win over COVID? There is no substitute for eternal vigilance. We would have to be vigilant against new strains, upgrade vaccines regularly and on an ongoing basis, and a mandatory vaccination of the global population. Sadly, there are countries, especially in Africa, for example, Burundi, Haiti, or even Yemen in the Middle East, which haven't vaccinated even 5% of their population. So, will the pandemic end in 2023? Will we see a return of the masks and the travel restrictions? I don't know, but I do know one thing for sure. Vaccination, isolation, and continuous upgrading of healthcare infrastructure is the need of the hour. Prime Minister Modi very recently said, "This is not a time for war." Yet, our world in 2023 has conflict written in bold letters all over. There is an ongoing war in Ukraine. China and US, two of the world's largest economies, are in the middle of a trade war. Taiwan is simmering and could boil over any time. There are tensions in the Korean Peninsula, nuclear tensions at that. The rift between the US and Saudi Arabia seems to be widening with uncertainty in the Persian Gulf. Collapse of Pakistan and the future of the nuclear weapons there is a cause of major concern. Islamic fundamentalism is rising across the globe. These are some of the important issues. There are a multitude of other minor strifes. The Ukraine war is in a stalemate. There is no clear winner, but surely both Ukraine and Russia would end up as losers from this war. Russia has dug in for the winter, and its spring offensive will hold the key to the end of the war. It did offer a ceasefire during the Orthodox Christmas in January, but this was not heeded. There does not seem to be an end in sight, with the US, on one hand, egging Ukraine on with an additional $3 billion military aid, including Patriot missiles. NATO is following suit. And don't forget, during the recent visit of Zelensky to the US, the Congress has promised to consider a multi-billion dollar aid and assistance package. This is being reported as the dawn of a new phase in the war. Yet, there are fissures within NATO and the US on how long do we continue and at what cost. Looming economic difficulties with fears of recession and unprecedented high inflation in many countries in Eurozone and the US, looking at inflations of over 10%, while traditionally inflation here was around 2 to 3. Energy shortages are likely to make this war or make continued support a matter of time. US and China continue in their trade war. The US has designated China as its principal adversary and has placed restrictions and embargo on export of technology and high-end chips, among other items. It has made it difficult for Chinese telecom companies to export their hardware and operate in the US in the name of security issues. Don't forget, election will happen soon in the US and campaigning will start sometime to the middle of this year. No party would like to be seen as weak. Recently, the FBI raided a secret Chinese police station in New York. Oh, yes, you heard it absolutely correct. A secret Chinese police station in New York. China is threatening US interests as never before. From militarily making the PLA Navy bigger than the US Navy in numbers, claims of hypersonic missiles, carrier buster missiles, and of course, the first sixth generation aircraft, weaponization of space. It is likely to overtake US as the largest economy somewhere around 2035. Geopolitically, it is spreading its sphere of influence from a deal with Solomon Islands in the Pacific, which gives it unprecedented rights to station its military, to Vietnam, to Cambodia, and of course, Africa. Checkbook diplomacy and the resultant debt colonization of Africa, Pakistan, and so many other countries across the globe continues unabated. China is cultivating adversaries, Iran and Saudi Arabia in the Persian Gulf, to occupy the vacuum left by the withdrawal of the US from the Gulf. Taiwan, on the other hand, doesn't, is an ongoing conflict with an avowed desire of China to make it a part of itself. It continues to threaten, and don't forget the Chinese dream to amalgamate Taiwan like Hong Kong. The new year 2023 dawned with unprecedented incursions, whether it was military aircraft or ships, whether they were military drills being carried out by PLA Navy and PLA Air Forces simulating landings in Taiwan. To the extent, a US think tank came up with a report to say that a conflict over Taiwan, and if China does invade it, will end up China losing. But Japan, US, would pay a very heavy price for it. The Korean Peninsula is under a nuclear threat. North Korea is flexing its muscles, especially nuclear muscles, with numerous tests and drills in the last few months, including incursions of drone over South Korea. It has fired multiple nuclear-capable missiles that landed close to Japan in its EEZ to flying over Japan into the Pacific. Kim Jong-un's missile tests and military goals seem bizarre, but they lay out an extensive plan to boost military power. No wonder Japan and South Korea have increased military spending and looking at allies in their area. One can expect more missile tests, more war of words, incursions, and diplomatic tussle in this area. Given the short distance between North and South Korea, possibility of an irresponsible act and its response are high. This could have disastrous consequences. Saudi Arabia and US were always friends with benefit. They seem to be having a fallout, but don't seem to be giving up on each other. The Abrahamic Accords were a major turning point and a major talking point as far as the US was concerned. that gave it an opportunity to reduce its presence in the Persian Gulf. This, of course, has not been welcomed by Saudi Arabia. Saudis, on the other hand, have also not supported the US request for reduction of oil production or prices. This was designed to make Russia bleed. Personal chemistry between Joe Biden and Mohammed bin Salman is very poor. While Xi Jinping has had a very successful visit to Saudi Arabia where numerous pacts were inked, including, surprise, surprise, setting up of Confucius institutes, use of Mandarin language in Saudi Arabia. Pakistan seems to be a basket case, a deeply divided polity, especially in the election year. Imran Khan's ouster and his threatening every institution of note from the election commission to the courts. And the army is finding itself threatened. And that is a major destabilizing factor as far as Pakistan is concerned. Internal conflict, especially balkanization of Pakistan, these fears seem very real. The Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan has declared a parallel government in the Waziristan and Pakhtunistan area with two zones, the North Zone and the South Zone. Balochistan, Sindh, and now even Gilgit-Baltistan seem ready to succeed out of Pakistan. The threat of FATF and the IMF conditions as far as lending of more money to Pakistan is concerned are concerns that do not go away. Nuclear terrorism seems to be raising its head all over again. As recently as the 27th of December, uranium was seized from a package originating from Pakistan in the Heathrow airport. Crippling economic downturn with forex reserves of less than 4.2 billion, sufficient only for 2 to 3 weeks of imports, inflation of over 27%, unemployment, all are reasons why Pakistan could break up. The withdrawal of the US from Afghanistan gave Taliban a platform to promote terrorism. All neighbors of Afghanistan are wary and watchful. Taliban's sister, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, is raising its head and declaring its, well, not really declaring, but almost declaring its independence or an independent state within Pakistan. All regions globally that see sectarian strife has Islamists playing a major role, whether it is Yemen to Palestine or Lebanon to Ethiopia. The Great Lakes region, which includes the Congo, to the Sahel region, both in Africa, where ISIS and Islamists have control over 40% of the area. Even Europe, like Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, even the UK, are seeing rising Islamic fundamentalism. In Iran, there is significant unrest, the most serious to date, after the killing of Mahsa Amini in the anti-hijab protests. These protests don't seem to be stopping. ISIS Khorasan is very active in Afghanistan, and very recently it caused a major explosion at a venue where Chinese delegation was to meet Afghanistan. ISIS Khorasan, don't forget, has the avowed plan to make this region Sharia compliant. Around India, Islamists are active in Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, promoting hatred across India through use of front organizations like the PFI and others. So, by the looks of it, conflicts of 2022 will roll over in 2023 with no major resolution in sight. Will we see a new conflict developing in the resource rich Pacific, where on one hand the Chinese have moved into Solomon Islands, on the other, to counter, Australia seems to be moving in with a new security pact with Papua New Guinea. China is being countered with AUKUS, Quad, and a number of bilateral defense pacts between Japan, Australia, and South Korea. Significantly enhanced military spending by Japan and South Korea is already happening. The renaming of Asia Pacific to Indo Pacific and its importance is not lost. There are a number of other simmering conflicts, from the one in Azerbaijan, Armenia, to the usual hotspots in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Ethiopia, et al. If this was not enough, the ballot boxes could end up shaking the world globally. There are important elections that would take place in 2023. For India, what are more important are the elections in Turkey, Thailand, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. In Turkey, the elections would result in one of the two: either the strongman Recep Tayyip Erdogan coming back to power, or Simozan of the Young Party or Muharrem İnce of the Homeland Party may come in. The victory of the opposition can mark a radical shift in Turkey's policies, especially with respect to India. If Erdogan wins, he may become more of an autocrat. In Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina will battle hardliners led by Khalida Zia. Sheikh Hasina has been showing some reluctance as far as standing for elections or leading the party once again. Bangladesh, which was once a bright spot, is battling slowdown and high inflation with shortages. In fundamentalism seems to be increasing here. Don't forget, there was a lot of violence during the Durga Puja with vandalization of the Durga pandals and the anti-Hindu sentiments across the country. The China factor remains looming and large. Pakistan, the less we speak, the better. Crippling economic downturn to secessionist movements. Ouster of Imran Khan and the elections that are likely to take place in 2023. Will Imran Khan come back? If he comes back, the army has its task cut out. On the other hand, so will other institutions like the courts and the election commission. The army's image has been threatened by never before. There are fears of survival of democracy itself. Don't forget, COVID-19 or the Wuhan virus delivered a global economic shock of an unprecedented magnitude. It disrupted global supply chains, slowed growth, and unleashed fears of recession. In February, Russia invaded Ukraine. The slowdown was further magnified, and now economists predict recession in 2023, or at best a very feeble economic growth lasting all of 2023 and even beyond. Inflationary shocks have happened globally, from gas to groceries. Prices have shot through the roof. Eurozone, US are seeing inflation of upwards of 10%, unheard of since the 1970s. The IMF predicts 1/3 of the globe will battle recession in 2023. World growth will be around 2.4% or less. 4 of the 5 major economies of the world are seeing significant slowdown. 2023 will be the weakest year in economic growth after 2001. Inflation is the most potent threat. Central banks are likely to be raising interest rates to reduce inflation, to bring it back or cool it at least to moderate levels. The rate of reopening of China would have the keys as far as economic development of the world is concerned. How quickly will this happen? Will China be able to reinstate itself into the global supply chains? The high energy prices as a result of Ukraine war, especially for the Eurozone, will continue to haunt. Rising food prices, unemployment are major hurdles as far as small and medium economies are concerned. The next 12 months are going to be difficult, even if recession is averted. Technology and technological advance will not stop. It doesn't matter what happens in the world. Web 3.0 is coming. This would be based on artificial intelligence and on blockchain. Augmented reality, virtual reality will become even more significantly prevalent in our everyday lives. The opening of space, both for military and civilian purposes, the enhanced importance of cybersecurity, and even more sustainable technology. India is leading this race with green hydrogen projects, solar alliance, and so many other things. We will talk about this in a while. Ultimately, the question will always remain, who will leverage technology better? Will this technology actually democratize the globe or the other way around? So, what is India's view as far as 2023 is concerned? Everything, sadly, in India is looked through a political lens. So, starting with the politics first, there are going to be elections in 9 states. Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan are going to be the most important touchstones as far as 20 general elections in 2024 are concerned. There are other issues like the CAA, NRC, the UCC, the hijab row, the temple issues from Mathura to Kasi, the eviction of squatters, all ripe for politics over religion. The standoff between the judiciary and executive is a cause of concern. Yet, the bright spot is economy. India has overtaken Britain to become the fifth largest economy globally. It is likely to become the third largest by 2027-28. It will be the third $10 trillion economy by 2035 as per predictions of the World Bank and IMF. Various schemes like the Make in India, the productivity linked investment of the PLI, Gati Shakti, massive investments in infrastructure seem to be paying off. The ease of doing business and ease of living indices show continuous improvement. GST collections seem very healthy, upwards of 1.5 lakh crores monthly. And of course, many of the economic indices give rise to optimism. Growth is likely to be over 6.5% this year and 7.2% next year. Yet, inflation and unemployment are major causes for concern. India is now the rotational president of the SCO, or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Iran will enter SCO as a full-time member this year. This is an important platform for India to engage with Central and South Asia. Coinciding with the G20 summit, India gets a platform to project its development model, the India model, to showcase its abilities, prowess in trade, commerce, technology, health, vaccine. There are challenges with balancing of intra-regional differences and rivalries, getting consensus to tackle terrorism, separatism, and extremism. India will need to balance strategically here, and most interesting will be how India will balance or handle China and its belligerence in the SCO. At the same time, India is the rotational president of the G20. This will culminate with a summit on or around 9 September 23. India has rolled out the red carpet with the theme of One Earth, One Family, One Future, or Vasudevya Kutumbakam, highlighting interconnectedness. It wants to make G20 come closer to the public and make it a people's forum. Towards this end, India plans to host over 250 meetings covering 30 work streams. 190 of these meetings will include top ministries and ministers held across locations in India covering health, finance, agriculture, energy, trade. Some of these meetings have already happened or are happening. Over 100,000 people would be coming into India for this. It will not just boost tourism in India, but also bring to focus what India can contribute to the globe. It has the opportunity to make the G20 forum relevant all over again, highlight its advances in global health infrastructure, digital and economic transformation, clean energy transition, want to bring in global stability and macroeconomic coordination. Undoubtedly, India will seek to leverage its technology to showcase leadership as well as capability. The use of technology to bridge the digital divide using implemented platforms that are scalable is going to be the key. The public digital infrastructure, or the PDI for short, consisting of the JAM trinity, that is Jan Dhan, Adhar and Mobile, Bharat Bill Pay system, CoWin are all major components. The UPI has revolutionized the payment system in India as never before. There have been discussions with over 30 countries for adoption of this. France, the UAE, Singapore have already adopted it. Open Network for Digital Commerce, or ONDC, is set to provide interoperability to democratize e-commerce, to connect small and medium-sized merchants and industry. Cost efficient, scalable, these are platforms that can make the world tech savvy. Don't forget, they're already working in over 18% of the global population. What is our view of our neighbors? Relations with China are not in the best of health, and India cannot ignore the situation of the border. So said our foreign minister. Continued Chinese aggression across the boundary is a reality, and this is unlikely to stop. India faces great challenges as far as the balance of payments within trade with China is concerned. This is heavily skewed in favor of China. India is dependent on China for raw materials. Despite this vulnerability, India has chosen to meet China resolutely, from banning of apps to stopping or reducing the ability of China to invest in India. While China refuses to talk about incursions in Demchok and Depsang and reduce troops, India is matching it step by step. No wonder China or our northern border will remain the primary front for India. Pakistan, the less said the better. Despite whatever is happening in Pakistan, what is our problem there? Our biggest concern is what will happen in case Pakistan breaks up and we have a humanitarian crisis or a refugee crisis coming into India. Security of nuclear weapons and the fear of their falling into Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan or similar organizations are real. Thus far, India has followed the policy of ignoring Pakistan and reducing Pakistan to a footnote as far as foreign policy is concerned. The new government in Sri Lanka has somewhat stabilized. Not that Sri Lanka is out of its problems, no, it is not. But India has managed, despite China's overwhelming influence, to not just hold its interest, but also replace China in many areas. Most importantly, in the hearts and mind of the Sri Lankan people. Bangladesh is an important trading partner, our sixth largest, with over $18 billion in trade. Elections due this year hold a major interest as far as India is concerned. With Islamic fundamentalism on the rise, China wooing Bangladesh with its checkbook diplomacy, India will need to play its cards right and will watch with great interest who will win the elections here. Nepal continues to be a challenge. Nepal is politically unstable and complicated. Prachanda or Pushpa Kamal Dahal, the current Prime Minister of the National Communist Party, has a Maoist past. Distinctly pro-China, he has called Nepal-China relations as higher than the Everest. Nepal traditionally has been a transit point for many anti-India activities, especially by the ISI. Nepal has recently reignited the Kalapani Lipu Lake issues with India. This is a challenge. So, what is the final analysis of all of this? India is very uniquely positioned in 2023. It's a rotational member of the UN Security Council, president of the SCO and G20. Its investment in new age technologies from 5G to artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and in Web 3.0, its abilities of enhanced digitalization, its ability to showcase capabilities in tech and space. It has made the transition to renewables smooth for itself, with over 150 gigawatts of power being generated from solar alone, an investment of over 17,000 crores in green hydrogen. Other investments in infrastructure, especially manufacturing, ease of doing business, ease of living, seem to be paying off. It's attracting manufacturing moving out of China, even out of the European zone due to high costs and energy limitations. It's trying to break into global supply chains and is a part of the pharma and vaccine supply chains and now moving into manufacturing, especially semiconductors. My friends, 2023 comes with its uncertainties, risks, and opportunities. Uncertainties from COVID to conflict, inflation to threatening recession, terrorism, and fundamentalism. Opportunities for India. India will undoubtedly be tested in 2023, both internally as well as externally. There are opportunities from presidency of both SCO and G20. An inflation of less than 6%, rising economic strength, political stability. In the top 5 military powers, India is a rock in the middle of global chaos. It's an emerging leader, a problem solver, embodying the principle of Vasudevya Kutumbakam. It has put its national interests above all else and has shown its ability to maneuver and balance positions across the spectrum, whether it be with respect to Ukraine and buying cheap oil from Russia, its strong position with respect to China despite vulnerabilities, its continued support for Taiwan, although tacitly, leaves India in a sweet spot, to be encashed in 2023. India's responses to the challenges it faces internally and externally will be closely watched. Please await my detailed video on many of the topics that I have covered in this video. Until then, we continue living in very interesting times. If you approve of the video, please leave a like and please do comment. This motivates me immensely. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you have not done so and press the bell icon. Do feel free to share this video with your family and friends, and as always, I look forward to your suggestions and continued support. Until next time, Jai Hind.